everybody. Welcome to episode 21 of the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. I'm your host, Gene Jackson. And this week, we are going to take a little break from the weekly reviews for a very special episode. I've got a guest this week that I'm super excited about. Anybody who knows me knows that this is my all-time favorite Memphis manager. And he is our guest here today. So let's welcome to the show right now, the one, the only, Downtown Bruno. What's up, Bruno?
Hey, man. Live from Walls, Mississippi. Hello, everybody. I'm just happy to be on this great podcast. You know, a lot of people might not know, it was a different podcast that you did, but we did one together years ago, if you remember, talking about Continental, the Alabama territory.
Sure did. We talked about Continental, and we talked about your book that had just came out at that time, which was a great read.
Right. And then also, you are the host and co-conspirator with Doug Gilbert on his podcast. And so the people know we did that. It hasn't posted yet, but we did that last night, you and me and Doug, and we had a great time. I talked to Doug today. He was thrilled with how it came out, and so was I.
Absolutely. Yeah, we had a great time. By the time this one comes out, the one with Doug will be out there. People will hopefully have heard it by then. So, yeah, man, that was a lot of fun. I'm glad you did that with us, and I'm excited you're doing this one. I've been wanting to get you on here and talk some USWA for quite a while. So, why don't you show everybody what you're wearing tonight, Bruno?
Yeah.
Look at that, folks. Look at that good looking T-shirt right there.
Yes. Can people order one from your website?
That's right. People can go to tinyurl.com/USWA podcast, and you can get your very own shirt, just like the one Downtown Bruno is wearing right now.
Yes. And I'm sorry that when I sit down, the folks can't see it no more, but I'll make sure before we sign off, I'll stand up again and let people look at it once again.
That's right. And that's why they call him Downtown Good Looking Bruno right there, because he
that's it.
He walks around Walls, Mississippi, sporting that T-shirt all the time.
You're doggone right. And it's funny. Akio Sato is the one that came up with that good-looking addition to my name. I was always Downtown Bruno. Akio Sato is the one that coined Downtown Good-Looking Bruno, and I went with it ever since.
That's awesome. See, because I've heard that for years, but I never knew where it came from.
Yeah, Akio Sato.
That's the great thing about these podcasts, Bruno. We get to learn a lot of things that, you know, we might not necessarily get to know if we don't get these opportunities to talk to you. So, looking forward to talking to you tonight.
Every podcast I ever do, I drink beer and eat chicken wings. It relaxes me, and I can just relax. I can't do a podcast at 11 o'clock in the morning or whatever. First of all, I'm too busy on my property. But second of all, I'm not drinking at that time of day. I'm doing things. You know, I want to enjoy myself, and I want the people to have fun too. So,
well, see, that's what's cool, because it's not like this is an interrogation. This is like if the people watching and listening to this show were just hanging out with us, eating chicken wings, having a beer somewhere, and we're just, you know, chilling, talking about some wrestling. It's not that serious, you know. So
that's it. We're not building rocket ships, and we're not curing cancer. We're just having a good time, and hopefully taking people's mind, at least for the time they're listening to us, take their mind off their personal, you know, individual issues or whatever, which we all have. So I think it's a great thing. So, hey, everybody, I hope you're having a good time. I'm sure we will.
Absolutely. Everybody needs an escape from the world right now. So I'm happy we get to offer one. And man, you talking about having a good time. Before we get into this interview, man, you know, I got the opportunity to see you this past weekend, which by the time this comes out, it'll be 2 or 3 weeks ago. But recently, I'll say, for continuity's sake, in Jackson, Tennessee, for the big Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame shindig over there. And man, what a good time that was. Everybody was so excited to get to see you guys. And, you know, I talked to Doug and Tommy about this when we interviewed them there at the show. Bruno, what does it do for you? How does it make you feel to see how excited people are to see you guys and see what those memories of Memphis wrestling means to all the fans?
Man, it means a lot to me. And everybody was respectful. Nobody was a wise guy. I'm talking about the fans. Everybody was friendly and nice and just genuinely happy to see us because they grew up watching us. I went from being a rookie back in the late 70s to working my way up in the business in the 80s, becoming very established by the time the 90s hit. And now through the 2000 and 2010s, here in the 2020s, I'm no longer a veteran of the business. I'm an old timer. This is my 45th year. And for people to still remember and walk up to me and say, Fort Duquesne Boulevard, Mama says it be that way sometimes. I must have really struck a nerve with a lot of people because I haven't said Fort Duquesne Boulevard in years. And people still, like the other day in Jackson, was saying it to me. And everybody says Mama says it be that way sometimes to me. That means a whole hell of a lot to me. It doesn't. It was great seeing the fans, the ones that I never met before and the ones that I met in the past. And it was also awesome to see a lot of the guys that I broke in with, or a little bit before, a little bit after, guys that I've known for 30 and 40 years. Carl Fergie, Tony Falk, Tony Anthony, Coco Beware. I mean, I can sit here and list everybody, but all the people that were on that event. And of course, the KAW guys, great bunch of guys. Of course, most of them are younger. They broke in way after me. And I never worked for KAW per se, but I know the majority of those guys, and I like all of them. They're all a bunch of great guys. Terry Golden's a super guy. And, of course, Danny Be Good I've known for years, and his son. And, Alan Steele, who's a Power Pro guy. Derek King, who was a Power Pro and I think a KW guy. And just a really good guy. I'm not sure if he was a KW guy, but I know he might have been. But irregardless, great bunch of guys. Johnny Dotson. I don't want to leave nobody out, so I'll quit trying to list everybody. But, I mean, all in all, it was a tremendous, not one hiccup as far as I'm concerned. I think Randy Hales and Terry Golden and Kevin Lawler did a great job of coordinating the whole event. And if I had a hat on right now, I'd take it off to them because they did a great job.
They absolutely did. And man, isn't it wild how time gets away from you like that? Like, like you said, one day, you're one of the young cats, and then next, you're the veteran. And I was noticing like the guys who were like the little young punks, like you mentioned, the Danny B's and Alan Steeles. I mean, those guys who are my age, now they're gray-headed guys, and they're on up there, And I know it had to feel like for you and Doug and Tommy and Carl Fergie and all these guys. I'm sure it still felt like you guys were just in the dressing room last weekend wrestling. I mean, like time's really strange that way.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like, okay, I see Tommy and Doug on a regular basis because they're on most of the same events I'm on. And me and Doug are very close friends. We talk on the phone on a regular basis. Carl Fergie and I are very close. We talk on the phone too. But like some of the guys that I'm friends with, we just don't stay in touch per se. Like Nightmare Danny Davis, one of my favorite guys. I love that guy. But we hadn't talked or seen each other in years. So that was wonderful. That was great. I talk to Dirty White Boy occasionally. He's another great guy. Yeah. Tony Falk, who I used to manage when he was Boy Tony. Hell of a guy. Just, there's not one guy there that I wasn't happy to see. Sometimes you go to somebody, oh, not that guy. And I mean, let's just be honest. Sometimes that's the case. There's usually a Brutus beefcake or something.
Well, Eric Embry wasn't there, so it was a good
Well, me and him we met at the Charlotte thing after all them years. We shook hands, we hugged it out. That's it. What I mean?
That's great.
Bygones.
Oh man, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, bygones. The other guy that I had, let's just say, a bad feeling about was Vader. Of course, he's dead now, so that'll never change. Unfortunately, I mean, God bless him and his family, and I'm certainly not happy that he's dead. And I hope he's with the Lord. I don't know if he was a man of faith or not. I hope he was. And I mean, God bless him. I don't wish him dead, but we weren't on the same page. Just put it like that. But I mean, there was nobody at this event that I could say that about.
No, it was a great time. It was one of those things where a lot of times things get hyped up in my mind, and there's no way they can live up to the hype or the expectations. But this totally did, man. I was looking forward to it for weeks and weeks. And had a blast, got to see everybody. And I was telling my wife on my way back to Alabama, I was like, I lived up to every bit of the hype in my mind. It was everything I wanted it to be. I got to see everybody I wanted to see. Just excellent. And like you said, guys like Danny Davis and Tony Anthony that I hadn't seen in years and years. And man, there's not a living soul on earth that has a bad thing to say about Danny Davis. Like everybody walked away from it going, man, I'm so glad I got to see Danny Davis because he just doesn't come around. But, everybody's got great stories about him. Everybody learned from him. He had such a hand in training so many guys in the business.
Absolutely. Danny's a great guy. And super guy. And you're right. And hey, just to throw this out there, for anybody that missed that event, there's going to be another event similar to that, October 12th at the American Legion building in Kennett, Missouri. I'll be there. Dangerous Doug Gilbert will be there. Jerry King Lawler will be there. Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express will be there. And I believe his son, Kerry, up and coming superstar in our business, will be there. And I'm sure there's going to be some others that I can't swear to, so I don't want to list names that might not be there. But it's going to be a really good event, October the 12th. Meet and greet during the day. And what's going to be different than the Jackson event, this event is going to have matches at night. I'm not sure who's wrestling. I know I'll probably guest referee a match. But yeah, if you want to come in, and if you missed the Jackson one, or if you didn't miss the Jackson one, if you liked it so well, you liked it, revisit some of us. I'm not sure if Tommy Rich is there or not. I don't know if you know.
I don't think he is at that one, but a lot of history there in Kennett. A lot of big matches. A lot of Kennett got its own concession stand brawl there one time, just like the one in Tupelo, and so a lot of history there. So that'll be really cool, man.
Yeah,
I'm glad y'all are getting to do that.
Another thing is, if everybody is interested, I completely. My guy Jonathan Hearn, my good friend, is the one that is my merchandise guy. He completely sold out of Mama Says It Bees That Way t-shirts. I intend to order some more by the time we get to Kennett. Plus, I still have some 8x10s left over, and I'll get some more printed. So if you want to get a t-shirt, I should have some by then. But if not, I'll definitely have 8x10s. So come up and, meet me, get one, get a selfie, get an 8x10. I'll sign it for you. And, look forward to meeting everybody.
That's right. Bruno's great to meet in person, and bring him some chicken wings. He won't be mad at that either. But
no, I won't be mad about that. Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit of USWA here, since this is the USWA podcast. Early on in the USWA, you made a bit of a transformation for a little while. You went from Downtown Bruno to Uptown Bruno. Managed Terrence Garvin and a few different people. Tell everybody a little bit about how you became Uptown Bruno and some of the differences between the two.
Well, Downtown Bruno, I was always doing my own thing. I dressed the way I wanted, whatever. They wanted to try something a little bit different. So if you remember, they put me in like a tuxedo jacket, top hat, and bow tie and all. And honestly, I didn't care for it. That wasn't. I'm not Uptown Bruno, but they just wanted to try something different. Because if you remember, right after that, they switched me good guy, and then I was enemies, quote unquote, with Jamie Dundee, and he became the JC Ice, the bad guy manager in USWA, and I was against him. So just to kind of, they knew they were building up to switch me, so that's why they just changed the name. So maybe they thought that would change the whole thing, but Uptown Bruno was never. I couldn't get into it. I'm sorry. So obviously then not long after that, I left and went to WWF. So of course, when I did come back to USWA, I was Downtown Bruno, so it was a short-lived thing. It was fine. Just another thing on my resume. I mean, I would start off as Leonard Spazinski in 1979. Then I went to Downtown Bruno. Then I went to Uptown Bruno. Then I went to Harvey Whippleman, then Dr. Harvey Whippleman, then Handsome Harvey Whippleman, and Downtown Good-Looking Bruno, of course. And, hell, but all in all, Downtown Bruno is who I am.
And in Memphis, when you got a weekly show like that, where the TV is constantly, you're promoting a weekly card, you got to kind of do things like that, I guess, to change it up from time to time, to keep it fresh. And Because, like I say, it was a very different presentation of Bruno than what we were accustomed to. So it was fun for what it was. I could see it not being a long-term thing, and probably not being fun for you having to get dressed up in a freaking tux every night.
Yeah,
but
because I was always a working manager. I wasn't one that stood there. I ran around the ring and jumped in the ring. Yeah. It was hard to do it dressed that way. No kidding, But
and then you got to keep it up. You got to keep it clean and keep it looking uptown.
Right. Yeah, that wasn't my favorite time in my career, but
How was Terrence Garvin that you managed at that time? What kind of guy was he?
He was very talented in the ring. Very good. He passed away.
I know. I heard that. That's a shame.
Yeah. Me and him and Cactus Jack and Jerry Stubbs and a guy named Big O, that was the ring crew, all shared an apartment together in the Alabama territory, Continental, back in, I guess it was 1988. I'm not sure, or whatever.
Yeah.
He was a guy that at one point nobody liked him. He was like I remember one guy used to call him the queer stooge because he wasn't gay, but he did the gay gimmick.
Yeah.
So they called him the queer stooge. And I shouldn't be saying all this because he's dead. God bless him. He never did nothing to me. But apparently he pissed off a lot of people. I was there one day in the apartment complex we all stayed at in Montgomery, Alabama. And Wendell Cooley cold cocked him and knocked him, didn't knock him out, but knocked him on his butt there in the, we used to have a common area. We used to, on our off days, or if we were wrestling right there near Montgomery, we had time off during the day, we would play wiffle ball out there. That's what we do. We play wiffle ball. And we were out there playing wiffle ball, and Wendell Cooley lived in the same apartment complex with his wife. I'm not sure if they're still married or not, but Donna Cooley, very nice lady. But anyway, he was mad at Garvin, whose real name was Terry Sims, was mad at him for some reason. And I mean, he cold cocked him. He put an egg on his head, the size of an Easter egg. So yeah, a lot of people didn't like him. I have to be honest. He never did nothing to me, but he was.
That's why I asked, because I've heard some people say he was a really good guy. Then I've heard other people not have such nice things to say. So I was kind of curious your dealings with him.
Well, like I say, my dealings with him personally was never an issue. I had nothing against him, but I do see where others did.
Right.
Was he guilty or innocent of it? I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know. But he's paid his dues in full now. He's no longer here. So, but that's. But if we're going to be honest, one thing about me, I'm never going to be a bullshit artist. When somebody dies, like Vader, for example, we talked about him. I didn't like him. I didn't like him, zero. Am I happy he's dead? No. Am I sad for his family and whatnot? Of course. I mean, God bless him. But I'd be a hypocrite if I sat here and said, "Oh my God, Leon's dead." I hate it when somebody does that. That's worse than just being honest. I'd rather just be honest.
And usually those people are just doing that to get themselves over anyway. It's not that they really care about them or the family. They're just using that moment to try to get themselves over. And it's so phony.
Like when somebody dies in the business that I didn't know that well or wasn't like close friends with, even if I didn't dislike the person, you know what I mean? Like me and Kurt Hennig, we weren't close friends. I always got along with him. He was good, he was all right. I'm not against, but when he died, it wasn't like we were close, and it just had me jump off my roof of my house or something. I was sad. I didn't like it, but it wasn't like, like now Eddie Gilbert was one of my closest friends in the business. When he passed away, that tore me up. I mean, I cried. I was at his funeral, and it was just very, very hard. That was one that was hard for me because we were close friends, and somebody we're close with, and I'm close, whether it's in the business or here in Walls, Mississippi, or in my family or whatever, and you know what I'm saying. I hope the people understand what I'm saying. I'm not being heartless. I'm just saying some deaths affect you more than others.
Yeah. I mean, that's just life. It's just a matter of what relationship you have with them, how well you knew them, or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of other stuff we'll cover, but I want to get this in early because I know this is one of the things that people who've been following our podcast are really curious to hear you talk about. So a few weeks back, we covered when Howard Finkel came to Memphis and you guys had your match. And of course, Howard was in this, in this instance, the roles were reversed. You were the baby face here in Memphis, and Howard was the heel. How much did Howard enjoy that, getting to come down to Memphis and play a heel and work with you there?
Oh, I believe he absolutely loved it. Howard loved the business, and he loved every aspect of it. The business is in my life, okay? But for Howard, the business was his life.
Right.
I live for the business because the business made me everything I got. But I have other interests too. I don't think Howard had any interest in the world but the business. He loved it.
Right.
When he got a chance to be the bad guy and have fun and emulate the people that he, used to ring announce for, Bobby Heenan, the Grand Wizard or whatever. I think he loved it. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of great matches in the world. You had your Bret Hart against Shawn Michaels. You had your Jerry Lawler against Nick Bockwinkel. You had your Dusty Rhodes against Harley Race. Downtown Bruno against Howard Finkel is not in that list.
Yeah, I certainly didn't know Howard, but I just watching those promos and everything, you could just almost feel how much he seemed to be enjoying it. He seemed like he was channeling a little bit of Andy Kaufman there in those promos for sure.
Right. But yeah, Howard was great as a person and as an announcer and as a heel when he tried the heel thing. But as far as as a talent in the ring, God bless Howard. He was my dear friend. Him dying tore me up inside. It did. I loved him. Yeah. Great guy. We always stayed in touch until he got to the point where he was not even able to stay in touch. But as far as an opponent in the ring, I'm not a guy that has went around and getting in fights in my life. And I'm like everybody else. I've been in a fight once or twice in my life. Any fight I've ever been in, a real fight, was easier than having a match with Howard.
So we talked about on Doug's show what a challenge it was like for you to have matches with like Scott Bowden, Emily Arthur, different people. Being a manager, it did put you in a weird space where you're working with managers and people who weren't necessarily trained or had a lot of ring time. And so who would you list as probably, as far as people you had to have a match with, as the easiest or most fun you had working with in the ring?
Well, I had fun working with Cornette. Me and him had several matches together, and he was the babyface, and he had a good punch, and I would take his punch and bump and whatever. Yeah, working with him as far as a gimmick opponent, it was great. I enjoyed it. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I know Corny would back me up on this. It wasn't no 5-star match or whatever, you know what I mean? But
as managers though, you guys aren't supposed to have if you guys went up there and had a Flair and Steamboat match, the fans would be like, what the hell is this? Like,
exactly. So that's what I mean. But what it was what it was, but it worked. It was, I enjoyed working with Corny. Even though she was very stiff in the ring, very snug. Jacqueline Moore, Miss Texas, we had some good matches. Me and Jamie Dundee, I wrestled him many, many times. I was the good guy. Actually, when we first wrestled, though, he was the good guy and I was the bad guy. He had his very, very first match ever at the Mid-South Coliseum against me. I want to say 1988. I'm not for sure, but around
it sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and his very first match with me, and he'll tell you. And I put him over. So. I had no problem working with Jamie. We were okay in the ring together. And, of course, I've had matches with Lawler and Dundee, matches where, like, if my guy lost, I had to wrestle Lawler or Dundee or whoever. I worked with Tojo, but that was towards the end of his career, and that wasn't easy because he couldn't hardly do anything. And I certainly wasn't Jerry King Lawler or Shawn Michaels or somebody. So, me and Tojo, it was a challenge that unfortunately wasn't very easy, but
right.
I've done the best I could with what I've got. And the thing is, you can't see it, but I got a little plaque on my desk over here. It said, "A man has got to know his limitations," and I live by that. I know what I can and can't do. People say, "Oh, you can do whatever you set your mind to," and that's bullshit. I can't become a cross-country runner. I can't become a world-class power lifter. No, you got to know your limitations. Then you work towards it. You can't do what I can't become an NBA basketball player at 59 years old at 5'7". You know,
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
You got to know.
People say that you can do anything you want to do, and like you said, that's an absolutely a great point. Like, no, there's some things you can't do, but there's things that you can. So figure it out. So.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. So if you're looking to support that next up and coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.
Right.
You mentioned a basketball player. That's a good segue into my next question from the 93 era. You managed Giant Gonzalez in the WWF, and then eventually you brought him down to Memphis. Now, again, much like in your Howard Finkel feud, Giant Gonzalez comes to town just weeks after attacking The Undertaker at the Royal Rumble as a babyface partner of Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Lawler. How did he like Memphis in general, not just the wrestling aspect, but just the town and coming to Memphis and seeing your home?
Honestly, in all truthfulness, Gonzalez didn't really like or dislike Memphis or any other place he went, because he stayed hotel to arena, hotel. He, because of his size and stature and how he looks, he couldn't go anywhere without being harassed, even if people didn't watch wrestling. I mean, he's an 8-foot tall guy, for Christ's sake, Yeah. So I would bring him his food to the arena, and at the night I'd bring him his food to the hotel or whatever. So, in all honesty, Gonzalez had no opinion on Memphis or any other place, because all he's seen was the airport, the arena, and the hotel. And that was it.
That's true, because he can't just go hang out on Bill Street, because it's going to be a scene.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. We were up in Canada, up in the provinces of Nova Scotia area up there. It's northeastern Canada, which is all country and woods and lakes and whatnot. And we had Moncton in the afternoon and Halifax that night, or vice versa, but whatever. Jack Tunney was the promoter then, had a van bring us from town A to town B, because we all flew into whatever the first town was. Well, like I said, one or the other.
Right.
And then the van brought us to the next town because it was an afternoon show and an evening show. So we all just stayed in our outfits because it was like we got through wrestling, boom, get in the van, go to the next town. So we're driving down from Moncton to Halifax, like I said, or vice versa, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. It was me and Gonzalez, Ludwig Borga, Lex Luger, and Jim Duggan. Gonzalez still has his big outfit on with the fur and all that, everything. And then, of course, he's 8 foot tall.
Yeah.
And we had to stop and urinate on the side of the road. And Gonzalez didn't have to. He was sitting in the van. And Duggan goes, let's have Gonzalez go up on the top of the hill. And when a car goes by, have him run down from the hill and raise his arms up against Bigfoot. And I said, Jim, one of these damn Canadians with their deer rifles or something's going to shoot him dead. We can't do that.
Oh my God. Yeah. They would have had quite the story to tell, but that could have went very poorly.
And I said, we can't do that. You're going to kill the poor bastard. No, we can't do it.
So you started out as a referee and then you transitioned to being a manager. And we talked about on Doug's show that was a good call. That definitely played out well for you. But eventually in USWA, you kind of returned to your roots and you did some refereeing again. Kind of explain to the people listening who may not understand just how important a referee's role in the match is beyond just the obviously counting and the things that most fans can see on the surface. What more important role referees play in matches if they're good?
Yeah, if they're good. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I've been doing this for 45 years, so I know what the hell I'm doing. Okay, a guy like myself or Jerry Calhoun or either one of the Hebner brothers or Tommy Young or Mike Chioda. I can list a lot of the late Joey Morella, who I was in the car wreck with.
Right.
Those of us that know what the hell we're doing, first of all, we know when to look and when to not look, how to, whatever. Mm-hmm. And also, we know how to pull a green guy or a rookie out of the damn quicksand. Because if it's just some referee that don't care or don't know, or a little bit of both, they can't pull you out of that quicksand. And once you're in that quicksand, that's an analogy I like to use, though. If it's two guys that don't know what they're doing, like two green guys in the ring, I mean, Dwayne Johnson, I'm not trying to be a name dropper, but I'm just being truthful, my best friend. He will tell you that when he was starting out, I would tell him, and we were best friends, so I could talk to him any way I wanted to. I'd say, the hell you running the ropes for? The guy was just kicking your leg for 5 minutes. Jesus Christ. Stuff like that. I can help it. But, right. And I've done that for so many guys. And I've called spots when I can see their guys were in the quicksand. I've called spots, where a good referee or a referee that cares is very important. Now it's no secret. I still go to some of these smaller venues and be a special guest referee. Now, mostly now, my special guest referee thing is ha-ha stuff. I'll do the thing where I, favor the good guy against the bad guy and the bad guy gets mad at me, stuff like that.
Right.
I don't do like I used to. But I do try to teach the other referees what to do and what not to do. And hey, man, like one referee, and he didn't know any better. And I explained to him. Like one guy was, injured in the ring after the match. He was laying there. The referee just went back. I said, no, you stay with the guy. What are you going to leave him out there like you don't give a shit? Little things like that. And he wasn't doing it because he was a jerk. He just didn't know any better,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Most of the stuff you see like that, it isn't from not caring. It's just not knowing because the people who train them didn't know. And, we're so far removed in a lot of cases, in a lot of these smaller independent shows from where guys like you with experience that have been able to train people and pass that on, and people are getting trained by people who didn't get trained by someone who knew what they were doing. And it really shows,
And I'm going to tell you something, Eugene. This is God's honest truth. And I want everybody out there to pay close attention to this. If you or a family member of yours or a friend of yours or whatever wants to get into this profession, if the person that opens or has the training school or academy or whatever never made their living in our profession, how in the hell can they teach you to make a living at it?
Right.
Remember that. Very, very crucial. There's some good training schools around here. Okay, Pro Wrestling Mid-South, run by Golden Boy Greg Anthony. That's his living. That's what he does. And he's good at what he does. And he does the old school way. He doesn't teach you how to crash through tables or hit people with light, fluorescent lights, whatever. He teaches the old school way. Good guy. Okay, very good guy. Great training school. That's the one around here right now. There used to be several more that unfortunately aren't in existence anymore due to people's health, death, or other issues, But that's one I'd recommend. It's out of Dyersburg, Tennessee. But I don't care if you're watching this from California or New York or Toronto, Canada, whatever. I'm not just trying to push Golden Boy because he's my friend. It's the truth. But I'm sure there's training schools all over the place. I think Manny Fernandez has one. If I'm not mistaken, his is in California. I could be wrong. I would recommend him. He was a great performer in the ring, smart guy, knows what the hell he's doing. If you're in his area, and like I said, I think it's California. I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. But I'm sure you can Google it or whatever. Yeah, I would recommend him. He made his living. He was a main talent for many, many years. So absolutely, a guy like Manny Fernandez, for example. Yeah, just anybody that's made their living in our profession, go to their school. Not some guy that works at the auto parts store or the Walmart or whatever and wrestles on weekends and tries to tell you how to make a living at it. Well, obviously that's what he wants to do, but he ain't.
Yeah. If all he's ever done is wrestle 10 miles from his house, the best you're ever going to do is wrestling 10 miles from his house.
Right.
Against him.
Okay, I'll tell you what, like a guy we've seen this weekend, Tom Pritchard, who's involved with Glenn Jacobs, the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, the Jacobs and Pritchard's wrestling school. Oh my God, if you're up in the Knoxville area, I recommend that completely. If you're a little bit further northeast Tennessee, Dangerous Dan Matthews, my dear friend, the one that runs my Facebook page, Downtown Bruno Bookings and Appearances, he's got a wrestling school up there, Net Pro Studios out of Kingsport, Tennessee, which stands for Northeast Tennessee Pro Studios. He's got his wrestling school is in the Bobby Eaton Arena. And Dan was trained by somebody that we don't really discuss anymore, but the guy was a good worker. And also Bobby Eaton helped him a lot too. And Dan is making a living at that training school because he was taught by the best. So guys like him, I think Sir Mo, who we seen the other day at Jackson, I think he's got a school down in Texas. Now, I'm just speculating. I've heard.
I believe he does. I know he has a promotion, but I think there's a school attached to it as well. So,
well, I would recommend him absolutely. He's a guy that's very solid in the ring. He's got a good career. Was one of the top guys in the tag team realm in WWF years and years ago, or here in Memphis too. And I recommend him very well. Again, so yeah, just look at the credentials before you hand over your money. That's what I'm trying to tell people.
I mean, the internet exists, folks. It's easier now to check up on people and do your due diligence than it's ever been. Used to, you had to ask around. You had to kind of, take people's word. But now you can get on Google and research anybody. And if you can't find where they've ever been anywhere or done anything in wrestling, just keep looking.
And Wolfie D put it in perfect perspective the other day when he made his speech at the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame there in Jackson, Tennessee. He's right. Okay, I'll tell you what he said in a second. I want people to realize this. Knowing how to do the moves is very important. Okay, me, 45 years in the business, I'm the first one to tell you, I can't teach you how to take a perfect bump or take a perfect arm drag or a perfect hip toss. That's not my part of the business. I'm not the athletic one. But I can tell you when to do it and why that's when you should do it. Okay? And Wolfie D put that in perfect perspective the other night when he said, hey, you can teach a monkey how to flip, but you can't teach a monkey why, when, and where. And that is absolutely 100% He hit the nail on the head. Hit the nail on the head. Our business is mechanics and psychology. Mechanics, obviously, is doing the moves properly. But if I give you a dadgum flying kamikaze, whatever, boom, it looks great, and you get up right after that and punch me, well, guess what? You just took away everything we just did. Sell it. Lay there like you're dead. Barely kick out on the 2.5 count. Don't take that move and then just jump up and do another move. That's psychology. Believe me. If you watch the guys that made the most money and drew the most money in our profession had the best psychology in the world. Jerry the King Lawler, by God, he sold more than he, took over. And people don't realize that. And I will tell you another guy. People always want to put this guy down, and it pisses me off because to me he's the best. The best. Hulk Hogan. Who drew more money for a longer time on a regular basis than Hulk Hogan? Nobody. He's like Elvis Presley and the Beatles put together. And he's the one. And he sold, and he sold, and he sold. And guess what? When he hulked up and did that little dance thing and waggled his finger, the people came unglued. To me, right. Jerry the King Lawler, Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes, they were the 3 best good guys ever.
I agree.
Ever.
And, and as far as, people getting into like how many moves you can do, you mentioned his name earlier. Your good friend, The Rock, who became one of the biggest stars in wrestling and then has since went on to be one of the biggest stars in the world, period. Right. You can count his moves on one hand.
Right.
Like the moves that Dwayne Johnson did in the ring, there was like maybe 5. But his charisma, his psychology, knowing when to do those things, and his dance partner, Steve Austin, same thing. They didn't do a ton of flips, 10,000 moves, but the stuff they did, they made it mean something.
And think about this. Those 2 guys you just mentioned, they both came from territories. Dwayne came from, he wasn't wrestling yet, but he was in Polynesian Pacific in Hawaii when I was there. And then, of course, Stone Cold worked Dallas, and he came here to Memphis. The guys that worked territories knew how to draw money. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, all the guys from the 80s and 90s, all of them worked territories. They didn't have to be taught what to do. They knew what to do. They knew what to do. And that's what it is. When the territories went away, the business suffered. That's just because all of us territory guys are now getting to the point where we're too old to do it. I used to jump over the top rope from the ring to the floor without touching the apron. If I tried to do that right now, I'd be either dead or laid in the hospital getting fed through a straw. I can't do it no more, and that's the thing. Most of us can't. I hate to say it.
Blow out everything you have, right? It'd be one of the last guys who came up through the territories, especially there in Memphis. What's your favorite memory of Brian Christopher?
Oh my God, we had so much fun together in the ring. We just joke with each other and screw with each other. Like when I'd be like checking on him when I was refereeing, he'd be like pinching my ass and stuff. You know what I mean? We had a great friendship. We're like family, we had a great time. I mean, we always, had a good rapport. I don't have one particular story that sticks out. I'm just saying in general, right. We just really had a great friendship, great relationship. And it's just very sad. I've lost so many people so young that I really cared about. Him, Eddie Gilbert, Luna Vachon, who I was extremely close to. That tore me up. Just these people die young. And I wasn't close with Scott Bowden or nothing, but still, it tore me up. I mean, this young guy, what was he, like 38 or so? I don't know, but
he wasn't 40 yet, and love the wrestling business. And I mean, I got the chance to talk to Scott a few different times. We recorded a couple times, and other times we just spoke on the phone. But he loved the business so much, like it meant the world to him to get to be able to work there in Memphis around you guys and work with people he grew up watching and respected so much. And he said that maybe people didn't always get that because, you know, he went out of his way to try to be the bad guy. And like Doug said, you know, he went too far sometimes, and he realized that later on. But it, you know, it was like a little kid, you know, getting to live his dream while he's in college. Hell, he was a kid, you know, in those early stages. Hell, he was, you know, a college student out there on TV with his heroes. So it's pretty cool story.
Yeah, but I mean, he's like Howard Finkel. I worked with him many times, but he was very limited in the ring, but didn't realize that. He thought he was out there, and he was.
Time I talked to him, that's what he said. He's like, man, if I knew then what I know now, he said, you couldn't tell me nothing back then. He said, I thought I had it all figured out. And he said, when I look back on it now, he's like, I didn't know shit. He's like, if I could go back and like tell myself, you know, my present self, go back and tell my past self, like just chill out, listen to somebody. You don't know it all. He said it'd have been a lot different story. But hey, you can say a lot of us, right? I mean, we all thought we had the world by the balls when we were in our early 20s. So.
Oh my God, you ain't lying. I thought I was 10 feet tall and bulletproof.
That's right. Do you feel like people outside the Memphis territory really understand and appreciate how talented Brian was? Like this podcast, one of the things I've been telling people, especially like where we're covering in 93, if they don't get anything else out of this USWA podcast, I want people to really get to see these clips, hear these promos, and understand how great of a heel Brian was. Like Grandmaster, that was a great character for the time and Too Cool and all that. But my God, he was such a good heel.
He was
there in Memphis. It was so
great,
underrated.
We'll put it like this: people must realize it because he ended up going to WWE, of course, with the Grandmaster gimmick and everything. True enough, but bear this in mind: WWE. Or F, or whatever you want to call it at the time, was if somebody could open the door for you, you know, obviously Jerry Lawler opened the door for him, but Vince McMahon was not going to just hire somebody and give them a position because of who their son was, their brother, their friend, their what, unless you can. Once you get in the door, you better stay in the door. You're on your own then, okay?
Yeah.
And he stayed. He did a great job. But in Memphis, he drew money. He was a solid performer in the ring. He could talk. He had charisma. He could bump. He could be a babyface or a heel. He was. Of course, he was here in Memphis. We all switched back and forth. That's what we did. There was a certain core group of us: me, Lawler, Dundee, Brian Christopher, you know, Jeff Jarrett, whatever. We'd all go back and forth. All of us. Doug Gilbert, Eddie Gilbert, whatever. So, but either way, when he was handed the football, he ran with it. I mean, I've never seen him have a bad match unless it was his opponent's shortcomings, you know, whatever. But he was. I mean, I can't say nothing. You know, if I wanted to, which I don't, I can't think of no criticism about him as a very talented member of USWA and WWE.
And people who don't know, I've heard people say over the years, like, "Oh, he just got where he got because of his dad." And like you said, you know, being Jerry Lawler's son opened some doors for opportunities. But I'm convinced if he never met Jerry Lawler and he was Joe Smith, the plumber's son, if with the talent he had, he would have made it in the business. I mean,
I agree. That's what I hate when people say stuff like that. Okay. Just on that subject, people say, look at Greg Gagne. He's tall and skinny. And if Vern Gagne didn't own AWA, he would never been a. Greg Gagne was a damn good performer in the ring. And he was very smart. He ended up going to WCW and for a short time WWE as a producer or an agent because he was very smart. Vern was already passed away. So you can't say it was because of Vern, okay? Now, has there been instances? Yes. And we all know George Goulas.
The poster child for nepotism.
And then, you know, you got lesser ones like Angela Mosca, who I thought was the shits anyway. And his son was the shits. Angela, when he was doing the booking somewhere, he'd bring his son in. Nobody wanted to work with him. He worked like this. You know, he was just, everybody I talked to says, oh my God, he's terrible. You know, so there's times with nepotism, but it doesn't last. Nobody even remembers Angela Mosca Jr., you know?
Yeah, they barely remember Angelo Mosca for that matter, much less Junior. But
he was the shits. He was the shit.
So, and this is a team that, you know, was Memphis, you know, through and through for years and years. But what are your thoughts on the Moondogs and Richard Lee?
Leroy Smith was Richard Lee's real name.
Mhm.
Me and him were good friends for years and years. We actually roomed together for a while. Before I get into that, I want to know, because I don't know, is Richard Lee still with us?
Bruno, this was all leading to me getting ready to ask you the same thing. Me and several other people, Jimmy Street, Wolfie, like quite a few of us are trying to find out, where he is, how he is, and get an update on him, because I haven't found anybody that knows. I was hoping you would know something.
No, I swear, a lot of people have asked me too. Even the other day when I seen you, I don't know. No, I thought he was a good mouthpiece, and he was a good, for the Moondogs, he was a good manager. I used to manage the Moondogs too, as you know.
Oh yeah,
years ago, when it was Larry Booker and Bill Smithson. But Leroy, Richard Lee, was a good mouthpiece for him. He was a different kind of manager, because he wasn't like a big, huge guy like Sid or somebody. He was a bigger guy, so he wasn't like the little pipsqueak guy like I was. You know what I mean? It was different.
Yeah,
he came off as like a, redneck jerk off, mean guy, whatever. He did a good job. I think the Moondog thing got diluted over the years. There were so many different guys. I was the Moondog. There was even one guy there the other day at the Jackson thing. Remember me? I was the Moondog. I never met him a day in my life. Did you see the guy with the big old beard walking around?
Yeah. So he did. I said something to my buddy. I was like, he looks like one of those wannabe Moondogs. So he really was a wannabe Moondog.
Evidently, that's what he said. Remember me? He told me his name, and I can't remember it. And I just went, oh yeah. It's like, I don't know the hell.
Yeah, I mean, on the Outlaw shows, every asshole with bleached blonde hair and a beard that could put on some cutoff jeans was trying to call herself a Moondog,
right?
And they, like you say, it diluted the whole thing.
And I'm gonna tell you, what really got me is he gave me that bullshit handshake. The one that only the marks that think they're in the business do with its 2 fingers or whatever. When I first broke in the late 70s, that was legit. That went away around 1984, 85. Well, these idiots that think that's how you show me I'm in the business. Yeah. What you show me, you're not in the business. We don't do it.
It works the exact opposite.
Yeah. If I want to shake Bret Hart's hand like that or something, when I met him, it looked at me like, who's this goof?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I learned. Yeah, when I got involved, they're like, "Yeah, don't do the worker handshake, because it's going to do right the opposite of what you was taught."
I'm going to remind the people again to go on your website, get this shirt about the Retro Wrestling Review podcast. I love this shirt. It's a great shirt. I mean, y'all need to order one. And
I got a sale going on right now, 30% off, folks. You can save some money on it. It's like $16. You can't beat that.
And it's a good quality shirt. It ain't one of those ones that's going to fall apart when you first wash it. I'm telling you, I love it. I wear it on a regular basis.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. I appreciate you plugging it.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia podcast network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia podcast network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school, but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Sheik, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
So this is something I mean, you weren't exactly involved in this angle directly, but I'm just curious to get some perspective on it from somebody who was around at the time. What did you think of that whole work shoot angle with the Snowman and Lawler with the unified
No, I
title
was there.
back
I
in?
was around for that.
I mean, I know you was there. I didn't know. I don't think you were managing either one of them, were you?
Well,
But,
no, let me
I
tell
know
you.
you were kind of in the midst of it.
Well, yeah, but I had a couple things. One time I was involved in one of the matches when they were kind of switching Lawler back good guy, and Snowman was already becoming kind of a good guy. I came to the ring side, and Snowman had Lawler pinned 1-2. Lawler put his leg up on the ropes, foot up on the ropes, and I shoved his foot off, and Snowman kept the championship. Remember that?
That's right.
So I was kind of involved. Now, what did I think of it? Let me tell you this. When it first went down, nobody smartened us up to it.
Yeah.
Nobody. We thought it was like a shoot. And Lawler and Snowman, to their credit,
Yeah.
they kept it that way. But that idiot, freaking, I shouldn't say this, Buddy Wayne says, I'm going to go out in my truck and get my gun. I'm going to come in and shoot that son of a bitch. I'm thinking, and I was talking to Boss Winters in the back. He's one of my best friends. Said,
Yeah.
so, because something's happening on wrestling, Buddy Wayne is going to murder him in cold blood on live TV, and he thinks that's the right thing to do.
That'll show him.
Yeah, that'll show him. I'll be in a death chair or what? What an idiot! I'm sorry, that was one of the dumbest things I've heard anybody say. But then we realized it was a work after a while. But I mean, still, if he was disrupting the TV, no, you don't do that. You have him arrested, or you have the police escort him from the building. You don't kill him. You know?
Right. So how did the fans take that at the time? I mean, that was kind of ahead of its time as far as the work shoot type things. And
it got over. The houses came up week after week after week. The houses came up, and that's back when the people. It was like the people were, it was a mostly predominantly African American crowd too, especially after the Snowman thing. And they would chant, like there was an old saying back in the 90s, get Buck. You remember that? They would all say it. And then finally the security had to say, they can't say it no more because it sounds too much like get effed. You know what I mean? So then, I want to explain that to them. That was great. Then they started with the whoop, there it is. Whoop, there it is. That was great. And I loved it. When Lawler was beating somebody up or Snowman or whoever, whoop, there it is. I freaking loved it. I loved it. That was a good time in the USWA. A very good time.
Well, that's awesome. That's what I wanted. I wanted to kind of hear like somebody's perspective on it who was actually there at the time. So that's cool that you can kind of shed some light.
And I always liked. I know they had their issues, and God bless him, he's gone now. But I always liked Eddie Crawford, Snowman. I never had any personal issues with him. And he had those big old soup bones for a fist. When he'd hit me, didn't even feel it. I took a lot of bumps for him.
So what's the story with the whole pawning the belt and didn't want to lose it back and all that jazz?
Yeah, there was a guy, he's dead now too, but he was one of those other guys I was telling you that nobody liked, named Tom Burton, who they brought in to be Tony Anthony's partner as Dirty White Boy because Len Denton didn't come in that time. He was still up in Oregon or something. This guy, Tom Burton, like I said, he's dead now. God bless him. Even though I didn't like him, but I still, he overheard Lawler saying something about, we're going to take the belt off Snowman or something. And for whatever reason, or supposedly, I don't know. I wasn't there with the conversation. So Tom Burton went to Snowman and said, well, Lawler said he's going to take the belt off you, but I just letting you know, blah, blah, blah. I don't know why he told him. So that's when Snowman got pissed off and left with the belt. And he started doing commercials for like a bail bond agency downtown Memphis with the belt and just different things with the belt.
Right.
And I don't know if he pawned it or he sold it to somebody or whatever. I don't know. But the Tom Burton guy started that whole shit and messed up the whole deal.
Wow. Yeah, there's a few different versions of that story. The most popular one, well, there's two versions. One's he took it to a pawn shop. Another's that he traded to a drug dealer for drugs, and that like Eddie Marlin had to go down to the rough side of town and get the belt back from like a drug dealer or something. I don't know which one.
I don't picture that happening. I don't picture Eddie Marlin going to North
I was like, well, I wish a camera would have followed him, because that would have been good TV to see Eddie Marlin bust up in a
I'm not
crack
saying
house.
It didn't happen, but I don't think so.
With that green jacket on,
Yeah.
Let me tell you something right now.
Happen, I don't think so. I think it was. I don't think no drug dealer wanted no championship belt. They just want money and more drugs,
Yeah, because I mean that belt was a little silver, so I don't even think he would have wore that out around town. But anyway, before we veer too far off the rails on that,
right?
So let's run through a few names from the USWA, and you just kind of tell me, your thoughts on them, or a fun memory of them, or just what comes to mind when you hear this name. First one we're going to mention, Dirty Dutch Mantell.
Oh, he's one of my dear friends in the business. I've known him for I just touched my screen. Okay, am I still there?
Yeah, you're good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I reached up. There was a flea or something on my screen. I tried to get rid of it. All of a sudden, everything went blank. Oh, Dutch is one of my close friends in the business. We go back forever, over 40 years. Great guy. I mean, one of the smartest guys, one of the most sarcastic, in a good way, guys. He's got a great sense of humor. And the main thing is, just like my two cousins, Dutch is a Vietnam veteran, and I salute every veteran, every service man and woman in the world, in our country. I should say, not in the world. I don't salute the Iranians, whatever.
Right.
Okay. All the USGIs. But I have a special place in my heart for Vietnam veterans, because my two cousins were both disabled from that, and Dutch was a Vietnam veteran. So, I have nothing but high praise for
and just the greatest storyteller in the world. I can listen to Dutch tell stories just endlessly, man. Whether they're true or not, it doesn't matter. He's just so good at telling.
Yeah.
Brickhouse Brown.
You know the old saying, if you can't say something good about somebody, don't say nothing.
Yeah. Fair enough. Moving on. Nature Boy Buddy Landale.
I loved him. Oh, that was one of the ones that got me when he died. Man, me and him got along great. I wish I'd have saved it. He sent me an email one day. Me and him used to stay in touch with email back before texting was the big thing. We'd email each other. And I wish the hell I'd have saved it. I mean, I didn't know he was going to get killed, die. He sent me an email saying, Bruno, in 38 years or 34, whatever, his time in the business, he goes, you're one of the only guys that I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about. That meant a lot to me. It really did. And I mean, a lot of people did say bad things about Buddy Landale, and he'll tell you himself, some of it was probably justified. But I got along great with him. Tremendous talent in the ring. One of the absolute best. A lot of people don't know this too. At one point, he had a body like Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
His real name was William Fritz Answer, Ansor. Wow. And he had, when he first broke in, he had dark brown hair. And he was, like I said, he was built like dadgum Franco Columbo or somebody. And just smooth as ice in the ring. God bless him. And he was a Christian
great on
man
promos.
Oh my God, his promos.
That Bill and Buddy stuff from '86, the Bill and Buddy show, that whole angle, man, that's some of the best stuff ever. And the Memphis Mafia. I was looking at that picture on Doug's table Saturday, man, and you think that Doug and Tommy's the only two left, and Eddie, Brian, and Buddy are all gone. But man, what a group that was.
Oh my God, yeah, yes, absolutely.
So a guy that
I love this.
A guy that came through at the end of his career there in the USWA, Billy Jack Haynes.
Oh my God. I never had any personal problems with him at all. I liked him as a person. I thought he was good in the ring. But evidently he had some really evil in him, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, since then, yeah.
Well, even during that, he evidently he borrowed a car from one of these girls that used to always be at the matches that would helping guys sell their pictures or whatever. Borrowed her car and never brought it back. And it was found abandoned up in Oregon or Idaho or something. And he took it and went all the way back to, I guess, Seattle or Portland, wherever he was from.
Oh yeah, Portland. So yeah, I guess he borrowed the car and just went home and then abandoned
and then
it.
something happened to it. He just left it, and I guess he found his way back some other way. But from my understanding, that destroyed that poor girl's life, and she ended up dying. She couldn't even get to work, and she didn't have any money, and she became homeless. I mean, I've heard all this. Her name was Debbie Fletcher.
Yeah. Wow.
And then of course, you heard that Billy Jack Haynes has allegedly murdered his wife.
Oh yeah. That's why I was curious. I heard he was like a volatile dude back then that like they said you could be in the dressing room with him and everything's fine. And then he could just go off the handle just to drop the hat and then be fine again.
Yeah. And then, of course, the other things about him, like he said things that are completely absurd. You know, Bill Clinton sent me to kill these two teenage drug dealers. You know, that just, you heard the bullshit he said. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then, I'm not going to mention any names. I'm not trying to get anybody's name dug up, but he said that one allegedly homosexual executive in WWE followed him into the shower and put his finger up Billy's rectum. Billy Jack would have knocked that guy into the middle of next week. First of all, you couldn't do that to somebody. There's no way you could just, you know what I mean? Especially so just making things up that were completely absurd. So I kept him at an arm's length. He asked me to borrow $1,000 one time, and I just said, no, I don't lend money. I would have never seen that money again. That was right about the time he borrowed that girl's car and never came back. So
yeah, you would have funded the trip. He got a car. He just needed some cash for some gas money and some food and Lord knows what else.
So yeah, but I said, personally, I had nothing, no negative. But you know what I'm saying. I'm just telling you.
Oh yeah. No, I'm with you. Here's a guy I got the opportunity to be around quite a bit in the late 90s. And if there's ever a trivia question of who was under a mask, it's either this guy or Roger Smith 9 times out of 10. Of course, I'm talking about Don Bass.
Yeah, I've known Don for 40. Knew Don for 40 years. It would have been 40 if he was still living, you know. But
right.
No, I got nothing bad to say about him. You know, he was a mainstay. He was always a dependable guy, and you know, he was good about, like, if there was an event in Jonesboro, let's just see, for example, I'm just making this up, just for example, he lived in West Memphis. Okay, let's say Lawler was supposed to wrestle main event against Billy Travis in Jonesboro, and Billy couldn't make it for whatever reason. Don was always a good standby guy. Hey, can you come to Jonesboro? You know, whatever. He was good about filling in around the Memphis area. And he was a good hand, you know. And I hate that he left us. You know, I always got along good with him.
Yeah, he had a lot of great stories, too. He was kind of like, you know, Dutch and Phil Hickerson and those guys. We'd sit around him in the dressing room and just listen to him, you know, tell stories of.
Yeah, we always got along. Yeah, I don't have any negative things to say about him.
But I've noticed that in 93, what you just mentioned, like as people have abruptly quit, suddenly the Rock and Roll Phantom would show up on the card out of the blue. Because like you said, they called Don in to fill in.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So here's a guy we saw Saturday in Jackson, Coco Beware.
Oh, me and him are very good friends. Yeah, me and him always have a good time. I always laugh and cut up. And I've known Coco. I mean, I'm really aging myself. He's another guy I've known for 40 years, you know. But I mean, yeah, he's. I got nothing but positive things to say about Coco. You know, I've refereed many of his matches. You know, I've managed people that went against him or whatever. You know, so we always got along.
But he wasn't anybody to trifle with, though, man. I've seen some footage. Well, I've seen it in person a few times, but they're, you know, like we're watching on one podcast we're covering 1985, and he put a hurting on some of them enhancement guys. That Brainbuster was tough.
Yeah, that's a move I would never take, even though Coco's my close friend, because you're just that and a pile driver. You're putting your whole life either between somebody's legs or under their armpit. I'm not going to do it. No.
Yeah.
And Coco wasn't reckless, but it's one of those deals that guy's entire friggin', life is in your hands.
Yeah, it's just by design. It's hard to protect somebody on that move.
Right.
Just,
Yeah, but no, me and Coco are very close. And but he's a tough son of a bitch. You don't F with him, that's for sure.
No.
You don't. He'll beat the hell out of you. He can. and he has. And
oh yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I seen him walking around there Saturday night, and I was like, "Yeah, I wouldn't go mess with Coco right now." Like,
Oh,
you know,
no.
I'm not quite sure what age he is. I'm sure he's older than what he looks like today. But I wouldn't mess with him to this very day.
Yeah, he's probably
Super
my
nice guy.
age or a little bit older. I'll be 59 next month. He's probably a year or two older than me. We're in the same ballpark, basically.
Ballpark. I got you. So this guy, I'm not sure if I know he was in the USWA feud with Brian Christopher. I don't know if you were in and out around this time. Chris Adams.
You know, I never met him. I wasn't
Okay.
there at the time, but I was on the road constantly with WWF. So yeah, I never.
He's another one kind of like Billy Jack, where there's some wild stories out there about him. So
I've
I
heard
was
the
just gonna
stories,
see if,
but I don't
yeah,
think it would be. I don't think it would be fair for me to comment since I never met him. You know what I'm saying?
right. No, absolutely. Yeah. Here's a tag team that I know you managed them in the WWF, but they passed through Memphis first as Simply Divine, Rex King and Steve Dahl, who would go on to be Well Done.
Yeah, I like both those guys. I got along very well with both of them. Had a good time with them. They didn't get the push I think they deserved in WWF at the time. Maybe because that was still during the time of Giants. You know, the Legion of Doom and the Warlord and Barbarian. You know, those big old
Yeah.
guys. Demolition and whatnot. But I mean, I like both those guys. I get nothing but fond memories. And that's another two guys that left us way too early. And it's a damn shame.
Yeah. I mean, that's two guys we should have saw walking around there at that Hall of Fame, you know, honestly.
Yeah.
Being the age they were.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I actually enjoy this word association thing. It gets my mind going.
We got a few more here. We aren't going to keep you too much longer, but there's a few more names here I'm curious to kind of hear your thoughts on. Tracy Smothers.
Oh, me and him always got along. Tracy was a good guy, and he was another one that you don't mess with. He was a solid sumbitch now. He was,
Oh, yeah.
No, I like Tracy. I mean, I've worked with him as a referee, as a manager, against him and with him. You know, just a really good guy. And he was a thug. T is for tough, H is for hell, U is for ugly, and G is for jail because a thug can't spell. I love that.
That's such good stuff, man. I got the opportunity one night to do commentary for a death match tournament with Tracy. And, you know, those death matches, they spend 20 and 30 minutes having to set them up and clean them up and all that. So in between every match, I got to pick Tracy's brain and hear him tell stories. And the whole thing took like 4 hours. So I spent probably 2 of it talking to Tracy and asking him questions. And man, again, like kind of like Dutch, man, just a great storyteller. And just, you can tell he loved the business and loved the time he spent in it. And, one of my favorite nights ever, even though the death match sucked. You know, I hate that.
Yeah, I hate that shit. But
getting to hang out with Tracy made it worth it.
What a great guy. Tracy Smothers from Springfield, Tennessee.
Wild-eyed Southern boy. All right, so next up, Brandon Baxter.
Oh, he's a great guy. I also happen to see him. Jesus Christ, he went from a puny little scrawny guy to a dadgum.
I know, right?
Freaking Frank Zane. I mean, oh my God. He looked great.
Yeah.
Super, super guy. Smart guy. Intelligent guy. You know, sweetheart of a guy. And, oh my God. I can't, if you put a gun to my head and say something bad about him, I couldn't, you'd have to kill me because I can't think of nothing negative to say about him. He's a hell of a guy.
And he's the guy that used his time in the business to springboard himself into another career. And man, he's a big shot on the radio over there in Jonesboro and has been for a really long time and helps the business over there from where he is. And yeah, he's one of those guys that, you know, you're happy to see that managed to enjoy his time in the business, but then went on and is doing really well for himself. So, and that was actually Saturday's first time I've actually met Brandon. We've known of each other. When I went up and introduced myself, he's like, "Yeah, I know you." He's like, "We know each other." I'm like, "This is the first time we've met, Brandon." He goes, "There's no way. I know we've met over the years." I'm like, "No, seriously, we've never met in person." He's like, "Oh, wow. Well, I feel like I know you anyway." I was like, "Yeah, I get that a lot, actually."
But yeah, super, super guy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Great guy.
But yeah, to see the scrawny guy with the long blonde hair back in the 90s, and then to see him walking around there, all buffed out now, it's like, wow, man, he grew into it.
He sure enough did. The first time I had seen him in years was when we did that Memphis wrestling reunion in Jonesboro about, I don't know, was it 3, 4, maybe 5 months ago, whatever.
Yeah, back in June.
Yeah, June. Well, when I walked, it was meet and greet during the day, and the matches were at night. So I left for a while, went and ate, whatever, came back. So when I came back, I walked back into the dressing area, and everybody was, making their way back in. And I looked, I said, who is this jacked up guy over there? I could see his back to me. This is a muscled up guy talking to somebody with his back to me. I said, well, who the hell is that? I didn't know who it was.
Right.
He looked like a dadgum, one of the actors that played in the Survivor scene from Schindler's List,
Mike Samples.
Oh, I love Mike. He's another guy that I'm crazy about. Super, super guy. And he is another guy, like you talked about with Brandon, that took his time in the business and turned it into something else. Mike is one of the top ring builders and ring sellers and providers. I don't know what the proper term is, but whatever, in the business. He's out of Frankfort, Kentucky. Well, actually Lawrenceburg, which is near Frankfort, Kentucky. And I recommend anybody that wants to buy a ring. I don't know the name of his company, unfortunately. I'm sure you could Google it. But
oh man, I could have told you if you hadn't asked. Because I've got a buddy he's just built one for him recently. Because he's for years now, he's been the man. If you want a good ring, it's holler at Mike Samples. I can't remember what his company is. I'll try to find it and put it in the comments down or in the description of this podcast.
Something Monster maybe or something like that.
I think so. Monster Rings or something like that, perhaps.
I don't want to misquote, but I mean, I recommend anybody to if you need a ring, contact him. Great guy.
But Mike was really versatile. He was good as a manager. He was good in the ring. He seemed like he was the kind of guy that just did whatever they needed him to do. He would go and do it well.
Oh, he did. And at one point, he helped do the booking in USWA towards the end. Great guy. I mean, I have nothing but positive things. He's a good friend of mine. We exchange Christmas cards every year. Unfortunately, I hadn't seen him in years. But yeah, if you don't mind, link him to this. Let him see this. Even if you have to just condense the part we talked about him, I'd like him to see it,
Yeah, I will. He's on Facebook. I've reached out. I've wanted to get him on this show because he's a big part of 1993 that we're covering right now.
Yeah, and, please give him my very best. I love that.
I sure will. So a couple more, and then we'll wrap this up. A guy who went into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame last Saturday, or like I say, 2 weeks ago when this comes out, whatever it may be. A guy who is known as the very first, more or less, WWF developmental guy, the Spellbinder, Del Rios.
Oh, I love Harry. He's a super guy. I was so happy to see him again. It's I never figured out why they never found a full-time position for him in the national or worldwide level.
Yeah.
There was nothing wrong with his ability in the ring. He was a smart guy. He was in shape. He was talented. He could talk. I never figured that out. Sometimes you just can't figure certain things out. I don't know why, because I really like the guy. Really like him. And I'm just...
and a great gimmick that you would think would have been tailor-made for the WF, because he really was a legit magician. He was good at doing all that stuff. So you think that would have been perfect for WWF television in the early 90s. But, like you say, sometimes it's just... if whoever's booking at the time don't see it for whatever, he just doesn't fit into their plans, then you just kind of fall by the wayside. But
apparently,
he deserved to be there.
Yeah, I can't really say for sure what happened, but he's a very likable guy, and I have nothing but positive things to say about it.
Yeah, it was cool to get to see him.
Yeah.
Bert Prentice. People run hot and cold on Bert. Some people, Doug likes him, other people don't. So,
hey,
message received.
Remember what I said about Brick House Brown a while ago?
Absolutely.
Nothing.
All right, we're going to end on a high note here because you got to like this guy. I remember being at a house show in Tupelo and seeing you manage this gentleman. Of course, he would go on to have a big career in the WWF, but I enjoyed him in Memphis as Jesse James Armstrong.
Oh my God, I love him and all the Armstrong.
Yes,
Jesus Christ, this guy is just a wonderful guy. One of the smartest guys that I've ever met. Extremely intelligent. And, his whole family, they came from intelligence. His wonderful mama, who we lost a few years ago, and Bob Armstrong, the patriarch, who was instrumental in my early years in the business. I went to his funeral. I drove all the way to Jay, Florida to be there because I loved that guy. And the whole family. Brian James, as Road Dogg, Jesse James Armstrong.
Yeah.
What a great guy. I mean,
he can't not be entertaining, right? I mean, like everything he does is fun,
Absolutely. And good in the ring. I mean, that Armstrong family, there must have been something in the water where they live. Every damn one of them. Scotty is my dear friend. Brad was my dear friend. Steve Armstrong, my dear friend. Bullet Bob, the Georgia Jawjacker, my dear friend. Brian, Jesse James, my dear friend.
Yeah.
I have nothing but tremendously positive and fond memories of every interaction I ever had with the Armstrongs. And going all the way back to Bob, when I was the new guy in the business, certain guys looked out for me. Because a lot of times the new guy come in, the veterans would try to eat you up like hamburger,
Yeah.
But I was very lucky that I had certain veterans that really took a liking to me. And this is before me and Lawler got together, because Lawler always looked out for me. But I'm talking about Bullet Bob Armstrong, Akio Sato, and Rocky Johnson. Then along came guys like Dale Mann that looked out for me, that made sure that I was okay. Guys like, even though he became a jerk later in life, Jonathan Boyd looked out for me. Newton Tatry, who was Guido Mongo, one of the original Mongos, looked out for me. Nikolai Volkov looked out for me. I always had, thankfully, a good reputation among these guys that at that time were top guys. And, they looked out for me. But Bob Armstrong was one of the ones that was there for me when I was starting out. Because here's the thing. If I did something I shouldn't have did, or I did the wrong thing at the ring or whatever, Bob didn't yell at me and cuss me out and tell me I was an idiot. He explained to me why I shouldn't have did what I did or whatever. And that's how I learned. Some guys would just say, "You're an idiot. You don't even belong in the business. Get the F out of here." How are you going to learn from that? That's why I try to help these young guys now, because I learned from great guys. I'm going to tell all the other young guys, a little bit off the subject, but young guys that are trying to get started in the business, remember this. 2 words veterans like us don't want to hear when we explain something to you that you should do or shouldn't do, that you did that you shouldn't have done. 2 words we don't want to hear. Yeah, but.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
Yes.
Ooh.
I tell you something you did wrong. I'm happy if you say, okay, but why is that? I'll be more than happy to explain to you why. Yeah, but. I can say, yeah, but all day. I've been doing this 45 years. Bruno, you should have did this. Yeah, but I can't. Yeah, but I'm 59 years old. I can't jump over the top rope no more. I can say, yeah, but all day. Bruno, you were late. Yeah, but I didn't want to get there early. I can say that. I can get away with it.
That's right.
You can't break it in. Yeah, but. Don't ever say, yeah, but.
Sound advice from a legend there. Real quick, I want to circle back to Bullet Bob for just a minute, because I grew up, in North Mississippi, so I could watch Memphis wrestling, and I did, and I watched Continental wrestling, and I did, and I went to Columbus, Mississippi, to the Lavender Coliseum, and man, the Bullet, Bob Armstrong, was like my favorite wrestler. Jerry Lawler was my favorite Memphis wrestler. The Bullet was my favorite wrestler in Alabama. Grew up on him as a huge baby face. And when I was in college in 96, seeing Bullet Bob Armstrong on Memphis TV and the USWA for the first time as a heel was the most entertaining thing I had ever. It was so wild to see.
You
how
remember who
good.
his partner was, don't you?
Yes, that's right.
And
I love that stuff, man.
And this is the funnest thing. Honest to God, all the years I've been in business, one of the funnest finishes I was ever involved with. It was on Channel 5 TV. I was managing one of Bob Armstrong's clique or whatever. You know, he was the big head of the deal, you know, whatever. And the deal was, I reached back to I had my back to the ring. I reached back to trip the good guy. But as my back was turned, they did a reverse. So the guy that, you know, Bob's guy was coming towards me.
Right.
And so Bob was standing over there near the announce table. I'm looking at him. He goes, you're like, no, you're our own guy. So we pretend I did the old Gomer Pyle thing. I went, hey, like I'm waving at him. Like I thought he was waving at me as I tripped the guy. There's 1, 2, 3. I looked over and it might have even been Jesse James. I can't remember. But it was like, to me, that was so effing fun.
Yes.
I tripped my own guy, but I'm waving at Bob like, hey, I'm doing good.
I mean, that's just old school, like, comedy, but it's heat, too. And it's not, like, silly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it worked. I loved watching that. And, man, Bob, because that's what was great about Bob is, like, he was being such a good heel, but there was, like, subtly funny stuff. You still, like, the fans still hated him. But, like, man, he would come out there because, you know, he was commissioner of Smoky Mountain. He would turn that cap around backwards, pop his clip-on tie off, and then start laying into Randy Hill. Listen here, rail man, and start going off on Randy. And I put all these videos on my YouTube, you know, on the not YouTube, but YouTube, but on the Facebook page for the USWA podcast. I put these clips up. And I put up a clip of one of
the person. I can't remember who.
I got to find that. I definitely got to find that because I put up one where Bob got into it with Randy and then eventually Brian Christopher, and then Road Dogg returned. He had been gone and he come out and attacked Brian. I put that clip up and it jumped up to like 80,000 views.
Wow.
So I sent it to Brian and Brian shared it on his Facebook. And now it's got nearly 200,000 views of a clip of Bob Armstrong from the USWA in 96. And man, that just warms my heart that people are seeing that. He was such a good guy right up to the end. Like I remember I did a show with him just a few years before he passed. And he was still working, man. He was out there. I stood out talking to Bob. He smoked 19 cigarettes and then went to the ring and still got a better reaction and had a better match than anybody on the card that night, you know, on a little indie show in Alabama. And people, when Bad to the Bone hit, man, everybody in that arena, didn't matter what age they were, they hit their feet and they were up for the whole thing. Just
what a guy.
Great stuff.
I love Bob and every member of that family, every one of them. And, it was great not for the occasion, but it was great to see them all when I went to Bob's funeral, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish it would have been just a barbecue, you know what I mean? Not
right.
You know what I'm saying? But just to see Steve and Brian and Scotty and that was.
But I mean, that family is everything that's good about the business. You know what I mean? Like,
got it.
They represent everything that's good about pro wrestling, and Bob raised some really good kids. So
you're right.
Well, Bruno, man, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. We're gonna have to do it again sometime. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, man.
You got it. Hey, Gene, I loved it. Make sure you tell everybody to check out on Facebook. My good friend Dangerous Dan Matthews has a page that I have nothing to do with other than I send him pictures and stuff. But I don't know how to do none of this social media stuff, but it's called Downtown Bruno Bookings and Appearances. If anybody wants me to come to an event or something, or just want to check out the pictures from a previous event, go to that on Facebook and reach out to Dan if you want me to come somewhere or whatever. And if we can work out the business and whatnot, I'd love to. And
we will share a link to that on the USWA podcast page. We will share it on Doug's page. And I will put it in the description of this video and of Doug's podcast. We'll help get that out there. I know you've come down. My buddy Neil Taylor that runs EPW in Boonville, Mississippi. I know you're a regular with them, and
great guy. Yeah,
Neil's a great guy, and that's a great show. And he's got a lot of. that's a lot of young people that are working hard and really trying to do things right over there. It made me happy to see that you're working with them.
Yeah, you know what? Before we close out, I'll give everybody their props. Yeah, EPW, Neil Taylor's a great guy. He's got a bunch of great young talent there that really, I mean, the Sellout Nova, my good friend Bone Crusher. We got the Frat Boy, and we've got Justin Klein, the manager, you know, my nemesis over there. Myself, who's the CEO of the company, you know, per se.
That's right.
And just a lot of just great guys, EPW. Now, also, Bluff City Wrestling out of Memphis, Johnny Dotson, the Superstar Kang, and, you know, DJ Brown and myself and Buster the Hellraiser Johnson and Pretty Boy Marvin and just a great, you know, group, Bluff City Wrestling out of Memphis. And last but certainly not least, Pro Wrestling Mid-South out of Dyersburg, Tennessee, that has matches in Ripley, Tennessee every Friday night and Dyersburg every Saturday night. Great group, great bunch of talent. James Elliott, Brandon Ray, Blaze Ray, myself as the senior official, Golden Boy Greg Anthony, and Pee Wee, and just a great group of guys. So I encourage anybody to come to any of those events that you're able to make. You can't go wrong. You'll have a great time, and it's family friendly, and it's inexpensive, and it's a great night of entertainment. All of those promotions I just mentioned.
Absolutely. Check them out. And don't forget to check out Bruno as a part of the Show Me Showdown Throwdown in Kennett, Missouri, coming up on October the 12th. That's a Saturday. Again, Bruno's going to be there. Ricky Morton's going to be there. My good friend, Dangerous Doug Gilbert. And, of course, the man himself, the king, Jerry Lawler, will be in the house. You don't want to miss that. And the following weekend, on October the 19th, at the University of Memphis, as a part of the big football game, they're going to be taking on Texas. But before that happens, there's going to be a meet and greet. There's going to be matches. A lot of big stars there. Your Memphis legendary favorites, including Downtown Bruno, will be there. So make sure you check that out.
And always remember this, everybody. It's like Mama says, it bees that way sometimes.
Hey, folks, before we get out of here, I'd just like to take a moment to tell you we appreciate you checking out the podcast. And if you would, do us a favor, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you're listening to this right now, wherever you're watching it. If you'll just take a moment to either subscribe, to rate, and review, let us know what you think. We hope you're liking it. But even if you're not, let us know what you would like to see changed, and we will take that into consideration as we move forward. So we really appreciate any feedback we can get. Also, we just want to say how proud we are to be a part of the WrestleCopia brand of wrestling podcast. Ray Russell brings you something for everyone over at WrestleCopia.com. Check out all the great wrestling podcasts available over there right now. And for all things related to the Retro Wrestling Review podcast, you can go to USWApodcast.com and you can find links to everything we have there, our Facebook, our Twitter /X, our TikTok, our Instagram, our merch store. That's right. We've got shirts, we've got hats, we've got phone cases, we've got all kinds of great stuff. And it's all right there at our store. And you can find a link to it at USWApodcast.com. There's a link to the YouTube channel we're associated with, the Retro Wrestling Archive. You can find all that there. And if you have questions for us, if you saw something on the show that you have a question about or a comment about, if you've got some info to answer a question we have, or you had a question you want us to read on the air, if you want to work out an ad swap, if you want to have any kind of communication with us, you can go and send an email to USWApodcast@outlook.com, and I will get back to you just as quickly as humanly possible. And if you're a fan of Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert, and if you've heard it, I know you are, check out DougGilbertPodcast.com for all things related to Doug's podcast. You can find links to our Facebook page for the show, our Twitter. You can find links to Doug's social media, his Twitter, his Facebook. All that's available there, plus a link to the YouTube channel. And if you have a question for Doug you would like for me to ask him on the air, you can send that question to DougGilbertPodcast@outlook.com, and we will get it added and it will get answered in a future episode just as quickly as we can work it in. So we appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. And we'll catch you here next week for more